All right, guys, welcome to another Monday Night Live. Tonight, my guest is another veteran, but also the founder of Archery N Motion and the Valor Archery Challenge, both of which I'm sure you're asking yourselves, what the heck is that? We're going to get to the bottom of it here in just a little bit, but we're going to talk all things archery tonight, and I'm really pumped about that because archery has a special place in my heart and in my military transition. I'm sure it does for this guy too. Sam Westfall is joining us, and we're going to bring him on here in just a second. But don't forget to like and subscribe and then give it a good follow because, again, your likes and your subscribes and your shares and all that don't just help promote the show. They help promote the people who come on the show, which is the whole point of doing this. So please make sure that you do that. And at the end of the show, we're going to talk about Sam's social medias. Make sure you go give him a follow. Follow Archery N Motion and Valor Archery Challenge. Look them up on every single social media platform you have and give them a follow. Tonight's going to be an awesome show. Drop your questions in the comments, and if I can get around to them, I'll definitely ask them, and we'll talk about that kind of stuff. So also follow 𝐬𝐿_official.com. You can get even more details about this show, the show notes, and other things that are going on. So now we're going to go ahead and bring Sam on, and there he is. Sam, how you doing, man?
I'm awesome, Jeff. How are you tonight?
Good. Thanks for joining me. I know we're going to talk all things archery and what you got going on.
Well,
but first,
let's start with the shirt.
Oh, yes.
If you're going to talk archery.
Yes. Let's I got my Dialed Archery shirt on.
There you go.
Representing Dialed Archery because I love their sites and their innovation that they've been doing. Those guys are awesome guys from former engineers from HHA, I believe.
Correct.
And
yep.
They jumped over and kind of did their own thing. I heard a very unique story about how they left HHA. I don't want to call HHA out or anything, but sometimes when you want to innovate and do new things and there's things that are kind of impeding your progress, you decided to go do your own thing. And I think that's good. I think that's really good. So welcome, man. Thanks for joining me. Let's hear a little bit about you. How long have you been out of the military?
So April will be 24 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So I got so I served from 94 to 01 as an M1 Abrams tank mechanic. So everything from tanks to Bradleys, Hemmets, Hets, Humvees, Deuce Nass 5 tons, 113s, MLRS. I got to work on all of it. I got to shoot most of it too, which is even better.
Mm-hmm.
So, mechanics, when they always have extra rounds and they want to send them down range. Hey, mechanics, do you guys want to play? Yes, is the answer.
Yeah. I think everybody wants to shoot a tank at some point in time in their life. Yeah. There's places down in Texas you can go and shoot stuff like that.
Okay.
It's costly, but
yeah,
I mean,
I'm sure.
I would consider it if I was down there getting to shoot a tank. It sounds awesome. I don't know about, deploying and living in it like I've seen some guys do.
Yeah, that's a rough way to live. They spend a lot of time on the back deck, either warming up or sleeping or eating or whatever. But you can get pretty comfy in them, especially in the driver's seat. I've fallen asleep in the driver's seat more times than I can count. But they're awesome in what they are. They're phenomenal in what they do. But they're not forgiving even in the slightest. So that's actually why I got out of the Army, is I was crushed not between two, but underneath a tow bar. So I had a dead tank and a live tank, and I was holding the tow bar, 5-inch diameter, about 200 pounds, and holding it up, tow pintle, tow bar. I should have caught, I missed, and it went underneath, and all the weight of the tank kept pushing on that tow bar. And so it crushed my leg and dislocated my hip, my knee. 9 months of physical therapy and rehab, and then in 2001, before it all went sideways, at that point in time, the Army said, if you're injured, we no longer have a use for you. So medically separated out, that sent me into a spiral and then into a different career path.
Dude, how much does one of those tanks weigh?
72 tons.
Oh, and that came down on you.
Yeah.
Ooh, golly.
Yep.
Golly, man. 9 months of rehabilitation. How many surgeries?
None, actually.
What?
They threatened exploratory surgery to try to regenerate the muscles. And I said, Army doctors, my leg, exploratory surgery, absolutely not.
I don't blame you. Yeah, I was at Brooks Army Medical Center down in San Antonio. I was a joint with the Army. I was Air Force, but I was joint with the Army. And I was down there and I hurt my back and they wanted to do exploratory surgery. And I said no. And they're like, well, they could kick you out if you say no. And I was like, that's fine.
Right.
Like, it's my back. Like, it's my back. You only have one of those, and once it's injured forever. I heard so many horror stories about people with back injuries, not just active duty people and veterans, like tons of just regular civilians that you hurt your back, and it's one of those things that just it never fully recovers.
Yeah, you'll deal with it the rest of your life.
Yeah, so I was like, no, let's do any kind of physical therapy that you can think of, massages. And so I went to the Intrepid Center there. That's for a lot of wounded warriors. And I went there. I was very fortunate to get that kind of health care because it's top notch. That facility is crazy. But they did a lot of like pressure point therapy on me and a lot of things trying to avoid some kind of surgery. Eventually I had one, but I was able to do it where I said, I want to go see a back surgeon, somebody who specializes in doing that, and the nerves and the spinal column and all that stuff. I want to talk to a bona fide expert, and I got my way. I was very fortunate.
Good. That's huge.
Yeah, right? It's huge because it could have went south and they could have forced me to do it some other way. I could have been medically discharged for non-compliance. You know the drill.
Right.
It could have gotten really, really bad. But I was fortunate that I had a really good Army doctor who I was seeing. Again, because we're joint base, everything was joint eventually. Really good Army doc who was like, dude, I'm going to try to put some notes in here that'll help you out and try to hide you a little bit. Eventually it's going to catch you. And I PCS'd back up to Oklahoma, and it did. It caught up with me. And the first thing they did, they got here and they viewed my medical record and were like, you're pretty broken. How come they let you PCS? And, why are you still standing? And I was like, hey, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. So I eventually had a good surgery because of him. And I got to see a real back surgeon at a laser spine surgery. But it could have gone bad. I was out for like 3 weeks. It was like 4 or 5 months of rehabilitation. Not learning to walk again. I hate to say that because it sounds bad, but you're so stiff in your lower back that it's kind of just a shuffle there for a little while. Oh man, I can't imagine having I say all that, but I can't imagine having a tank fall on me. So you upped me, man.
It's not intentional. It's just how it played out. But it's like I said, it sent me in a spiral for a little bit, alcoholism. I was already a competitive shooter before I went into the Army.
Really?
So I figured, okay, let's go back to something that I know. So medically separated. Within a month, I was divorced. So there's another set of spirals. Alcoholism down the deep, dark hole, and then add firearms to it, because that seems like a good idea.
Yeah. Those three things, it's just like they don't hit at the same time very well.
Right. Yeah. So there's some serious stress, anxiety, depression, PTSD that were in that space. Again, not a good scenario. But the firearms kept me stable-ish for a number of years. And about almost 15 years ago now, a buddy of mine handed me a bow, and he said, dude, just try it. Grab a bow, send an arrow, and just tell me how you feel afterwards. Sure enough, instant I drew bowstring back, and kind of what you were mentioning earlier. Bowstring got back, everything went quiet. All the voices, all the noise went quiet. The only thing you can focus on is the release, the sight, the pin, and the target. When I let go of that arrow, a little bit of that stress, a little bit of anxiety went out the door with it.
Yes, sir.
And 15 years later now, it really has become my therapy, and that's part of what Valor is bringing that archery as therapy to the rest of the military and veteran community. But archery's been huge for me.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Like, I used to shoot all the time when I was little in backyard against hay bales with that old yellow, regular, you know what bow I'm talking about. Little traditional bow that you could get. I don't know if you got it from Walmart or where, but shooting at hay bales with those really, really rounded field points on them, cheap arrows, like, that didn't even fly straight. You would see them tail off real bad. Yeah. But I think the reason why I got back into it was because I wanted something that kind of brought me back to me. When you go into the military, you get turned into a new version of yourself, more disciplined or more rugged, and I don't want to say, because I don't want to discourage anybody from joining the military, because it was some of the best years of my life. But it does kind of turn you into a new you. And then you have to find a way back to yourself when you leave the military. And for me, archery was one of those things that I picked it back up. And same thing as you. You feel a release. And the cool thing about archery, and I want to hear what you think about it, is for me, archery is a successful thing every time. Because all you're doing is shooting downrange at a target. As long as you hit that target, it's a successful thing. Even if you don't hit inside the, the red ring, and it's not the greatest shot in the world, but if you hit the target and you don't break an arrow, a $10 arrow,
that's a win.
It's a win, right? So it's that discipline of it that, and like you said, everything tunes out.
So over the years, and like I said, I spent a lot of years in firearms after I got out of the Army. And even that's kind of where my buddy and I were at when he first handed me the bows. We were at a gun range, and kind of in that same scenario, right? When you're at a gun range with a bunch of buddies, you're muffed up, and the bulk of the conversation goes something along the lines of, what gun and what ammunition are you shooting? And that's really the extent of the conversation. Since then, I've talked to a number of veterans that, combat vets, that when they go to the gun range now and they put a human silhouette target in there, for the next 4 or 5 days after the fact, your stress, your anxiety, your situational awareness are all elevated to the immense level, and your sleep goes to crap for the next 4 or 5 days. And they might not even touch that firearm again for another 2 months. And I told him, when you come over to the archery side, you have no neurological connection to shooting that bow at a flat paper target, circle rings, or at a foam 3D animal target. There's just no neurological connection there. So it's all you're doing is creating new synapses in your brain. That's fun. When you're at an archery range with a bunch of buddies, if you're at an archery event, you're always constantly talking, even if you're shooting. And at some level, when you get veterans together, there's trash talk involved, but it's always in fun. And so you're getting that camaraderie, you're getting that connectedness, you're being outdoors, you're getting the mental and physical workout of it, and having fun, which is a whole different space than what the firearm world is.
Yeah. You know what I like? And I went to Total Archery Challenge a couple times. You know what I like about Total Archery Challenge is it's a competition, but it's not. It's a fun shoot. You're expected to break arrows there. I think it's one thing that a lot of archers worry about is, you buy some arrows and they can be a little pricey, but you go there and they make a deal of it. They have a whole stack of them, and they had a Christmas tree of them, and like there's broken arrows everywhere. I mean, Montana Knife Company was. Yeah, stuck in trees and all that. Montana Knife Company was selling a T-shirt called the Broken Arrow Club. You normalized it to the point where it doesn't, like, you go shooting and you shoot ammunition, you expect to spend money because that's what you're doing. In archery, you can go down here and retrieve your arrow, bring it back, and you can shoot it again. So if you break one, you're kind of like, oh, dang, I'm out one now. It can be a little pricey to replace. But the fact that it was almost celebrated, like if you come here and you don't break an arrow, maybe
it's a win.
You weren't having fun enough. Like, you're supposed to. Like, the whole point is taking a gamble at that shot, and it's supposed to challenge you. Like, you're going to break arrows.
So my first year at TAC in Colorado, I've lost 26 arrows in 3 days.
First year?
First year. Wow.
What course did you shoot?
We shot four of the 5 courses in Colorado. So
okay. I don't even remember. You shot quite a bit anymore. Then.
Yeah. By 2024. Again, Colorado TAC, shooting with a buddy of mine, 4 courses, lost 6 arrows. So still challenging courses, still took every tough shot that we could, but the accuracy's improved. So
yeah. Well, and I can't remember how many I lost. I want to say I took 24. I lost like 5 or 6 at least. Not too bad. Like, I was pretty happy. But I shot the easier course since it was my first time. And, didn't lose nearly as many. Like I said, I took 24 because I was like, this is going to go
it's
bad.
It's going to hurt. Right.
I expected to lose a lot, and I didn't lose nearly as many as I thought. But I could have lost every single arrow and still had the exact same amount of fun. It's just a blast being out there with people who, like, you get those handful of guys that are like, okay, pretty serious about this, and then the rest of us are out there like,
they're just slinging arrows for fun.
Yeah, dude, we're just out here slinging arrows.
I will say I have an unfair advantage. I created Archery N Motion, which is moving archery targets. So I've been able to practice on moving targets for the last 2 years. So that, again, unfair advantage when you're shooting at a TAC event where the targets are stationary and you have all the time in the world, versus when you shoot a Valor Archery Challenge event, which has moving targets or Archery N Motion targets, where you've got a very limited window to get in your shot process off and make sure you've got the right form to hit that target. It's a whole different world.
Let's talk about Archery N Motion and Valor Archery Challenge. First, how did you get into developing Archery N Motion, and when was that, like sitting down at the table going, this is a good idea?
So that was at TAC in 2022.
Okay.
No. Yeah, 2022. My buddy and I got done shooting. We went to the bar. We were having a beer. We were celebrating the day. And he said, you know what they're missing? I said, what's that? He goes, moving targets. I said, man, that would be cool. And my time in the Army was a tank mechanic. My time after the Army was 20, almost 23 years in technology, working in IT. And so take that competitive shooter, the tank mechanic, and the IT space, and I reached over, grabbed a bar napkin and a pen from the waitress and said, we're going to make one. And so I drew it out on a bar napkin, kind of designed the initial, and I still have that frame downstairs in the basement.
Nice.
Yeah. So we put together the first one within the next summer. The first iteration of it, ran it through every course that we could think of, every scenario. 2024, I took it across the country, 16 major archery events between active shooters, podcasts, and radio shows. Roughly had it in front of roughly 300,000 archers.
Wow.
So yeah, it's grown in popularity, especially this year. And I just announced the latest iteration of it earlier this week, late last week, which is the Monster Mover, 64-foot oval track, which gives you quartering to, quartering away, broadside, frontal, and 12-foot distance change, all in the same shot scenario.
Yeah, I saw the video on Instagram, and I was like, "Oh God!" And did you sit on it and move it?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
That's what I thought. I thought I saw you sitting on it, and I was like, "What is this?" And I read about it.
I wanted to prove the point that it can hold any target.
Yeah, which is cool because how fast does it move? Because
so when in that video we had it at 3.1 miles per hour.
Okay.
So it's moving.
Yeah. Can it go slower?
Oh yeah. We can drop it all the way down to 2.5, and we could crank it all the way to 4.
Wow. I mean, 4 is moving, but
it's screaming.
It's good because when you're in my part of the world in Oklahoma, when you're in the deer woods, there's a lot of brush, and if you're in a ground blind, or even if you're in a tree stand or elevated platform, there could always be something in the way of the arrow's flight, even a bullet's flight. So being able to, even if they're just barely moving, whitetail's just barely moving, kind of checking things out, you might only have a small window to fit an arrow in and get it done before, or you never had your shot anymore. I've been in those situations before where it was like, you got to be ready, and you have to be ready to hit the release because you have a small gap, or then it's 25 yards that way, you got to re-range your
Right.
all that crap, and then you're like, plus panic. If it's a massive deer or it's your first deer of the year, you got that target panic that kind of drops in, and you want to get it done. So I think the moving is cool. But now for Valor, is every station going to be moving, or is there going to be some that are static?
No. So the April and June event here at Fort Carson, because I am just right up the road from you, by the way.
Yep.
So those events are going to have 2 different courses. There's an entry-level course, 15 targets, nothing more than 20 yards, and everything's broadside. Really, it's kind of for those that have never shot a bow before, those that are new to it, kids, whatever the case may be, get them out, get them comfortable, get them shooting, and build that level of confidence and skill set. Once you're comfortable, we're going to send you over to the intermediate course. And that's going to take you out to about 50 yards, 55-ish. We'll have a couple movers on that. Mainly the movers are going to be on the novelty range. But on the intermediate course, half the targets will be broadside. The other half will be either hard quartering to or hard quartering away. That way you're really starting to feel that challenge aspect of it. Mm-hmm. And like you said, deer woods, elk woods, whatever the case may be, the reality comes into play in some of these. TAC has a lot of great setups and a lot of fun shoots where they've got them tucked into trees.
Yep.
But are you going to take that shot realistically when it's that close to a tree? Probably not. We're going to use a little bit more open space, and we're going to let the angles create the challenge out of it rather than a tree.
Okay.
I
so
do
that's
have some
different. That's
It
different
is.
than what TAC does, because again, they do. They'll put a target between
Narrow
two
gaps.
trees, which is cool because it kind of gets you to focus.
Yep.
But at the same time, the odds of you planting one in those trees, especially when you walk up and you see that somebody else has already done it, just
When you see a stack of arrows coming down the tree, yeah, it becomes a magnet at that point.
yeah, and you're like, oh god, I'm gonna do one of those, and I'm just gonna
Right.
I'm gonna shank it and it doesn't take much, it doesn't at all. Like I got lucky on I think it was like an 82-yard shot attack last year, and I could only see it was like I think it was a mule deer target, but I could only see from the belly up, so you couldn't see the legs,
top
right?
third. Yep.
Yeah. So you could see where the vitals were. You could see that front shoulder. So I kind of knew left to right, but you already only have this much because that's only as wide as the foam target was. It was the fact that there was brush in front of it and you couldn't see the legs that mentally I was like, oh, I'm gonna hit it low. I just know I am.
Where you're going to skip over its back.
Exactly. So my pin at the time didn't go out to 80 yards. It only went to 70. So I knew I was going to have to come up and I was going to have to kind of wind it a little bit. Yeah. So I did, and I shot under, but I shot forward just enough where I got into the plastic part of the leg about this far from the foam. So I was like, hey, I didn't break an arrow.
It still counts.
It still counts, right? But it's like, it was just fun. On my first shot too, by the way.
Oh,
first
that's
shot.
even better.
Yeah. So I was super lucky.
When they warm you up at 80 yards, you know it's going to be a good day.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think it's fun to do that and to kind of challenge yourself a little bit. I love the idea of the moving targets, and I'm hoping this fall, because you're going to do more this fall, right?
Yep. So we're going to have, April, May, and June are already scheduled and lined out. Working on a July, August, and October events as well. So
yeah,
we're going to stack them up and get everybody out here shooting.
We're moving houses this spring, so I don't know if I can't make the April one. I already know that. July or June maybe, but July or October, I'm like, hey, I have plenty of leaves saved up. I got some extra coin in my pocket. I'm going to try to sneak up there because I love the idea of it. Now, what has the reception been like? Because I know you kind of introduced it to people and got it out there in front of archers. What has the reception been like for Archery in Motion, and knowing that there's a new challenge coming up? Because I've seen several new challenges from other companies and organizations. What has been the reception to yours and kind of being different?
So that's a good question. That's a gentleman by the name of Joe Giglia runs a group called Elk Bros out of New Mexico, and they train elk hunters to be elk hunters. And so I'd reached out to him via social media, kind of showed him the videos, and met him face to face at an event last year. And he said, Sam, I like the concept of it. He said, but realistically, if I've got $2,000 to spend on a new bow or $2,000 to spend on a moving target, I'm going to buy a new bow every time. I said, you know what? That's fair. I understand your point. The next day he came out and he shot it because he was actually working through the event instead of just running a booth. And he had to pull me to the side and he said, I owe you an apology. I can really, really see the value of this now and really see where it's going to be beneficial from a training perspective and a novelty and just adding new levels of complexity to an archery event. He goes, and I love it. I think it's great. So take that. Montage Mountain Archery Fest out in Pennsylvania, a gentleman by the name of Greg runs that group. His 2023 event went off great, had a number of people come out for his first year event. And in the feedback that he got, everybody said, Greg, we'd really like to have a moving target. And like 2 months later, he found Archery in Motion. So he reached out to me, asked me if I would come out. So we took 2 movers out there all the way to Pennsylvania for an event, set up one on the course, set up another on the novelty range. Novelty range had a steel plate deer on it at like 40 yards. Ooh. And that had mixed reviews, to say the least, because now it's there's an extreme level of challenge to that, and extremely humbling.
Some dings in the metal on that one.
Bad. And because the cart is set up to where your target is always either quartering to or quartering away, depending on what angle you put it at. I didn't put the cart where the mounting holes are straight down the center of it. So you're always at a little bit of a kick just for that reason.
Yeah.
Number of other reasons too, but we won't go into that. So anyway, so we put the other moving target on the course at about 60 yards. And for those in Pennsylvania that aren't used to shooting animals that far away, nor animals that move, because these guys shoot strictly out of tree stands. That was an extremely humbling event for most of them. So they came back, everybody enjoys shooting it because it does add something new. It adds a new level of challenge and complexity to it. But I don't know that archers are they're ready to change bows every year. I don't know that they're ready to change that level of difficulty just yet.
Yeah. I'd love to change bows every single year, but
right.
You got to take another mortgage out on your house to do it.
Yes.
These carbon bows, and I got lucky, and I do have a carbon bow, so let me be transparent beforehand. I have an elite carbon era from its first year that it was introduced, and I found the guy online who was like, I got it, I shot it a couple times, it's not my thing, my loss is your gain. I threw him some cash for it, and I was able to pick it up about 50% off. So I got lucky. But, most of them now are well into the $1,000 range. Like the new Hoyts, $2,000.
Keep going.
Ridiculous with all
the RX-9 this year was what, $2,300 or something stupid?
Just wow. Like, you're getting to a point where I don't see how people. You're almost going to price people out of the hobby and out of the community, because you clearly have a difference between a $600 or $700 bow and a $2,300 bow, and rightfully so, because of the technology and all that. But when you get to the point where only the hunters on TV can have the new equipment, I personally think you have a problem.
Yep. I would agree.
That is an issue. And I shoot an elite because an elite is what feels best for me, especially with my shoulder messed up. The let off just works for me. I used to shoot a Hoyt. I've never been able to shoot it very well. I know people who shoot Hoyts and just love them. They swear by them. I can't shoot it with my shoulder. I just got to have a better let off, a more forgiving one, and I've always stuck with elite. But even elite, their carbon bow is a little expensive. Technology is getting pricey, and I think you're going to have a hard time keeping people in the hobby if it keeps going like that.
You have to bring something new to the table, and new cams and new limbs and new, you can only make the level of technology in a bow something different before it becomes no longer a bow.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the reason why Archery N Motion exists is because it does bring something new to the archery game. The monster mover completely changes the idea of a moving target, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of the guy that is holding the string and you've got a javelina target that's on a rope that slides down a couple pulleys between two trees, that's an uncontrollable speed, potentially causing safety issues. There's a number of different problems with that setup.
Yep.
This brings something new that's replicatable for every shooter.
Mm-hmm.
And it does bring new challenge. It does bring new technology, and it does make it a lot more fun because you have to work through your shooting process in order to make that shot count as it's moving.
So at Valor Archery Challenge, how many targets are there on one course?
So entry level, 15 targets, intermediate course, 25. So it'll be a 40 target course overall, depending on what you're comfortable and capable of shooting over the course of a day.
Uphill, downhill, a little bit of movement. How did you determine kind of the ultimate kind of setup for each course, and kind of what was the thought process into that to make it challenging but enjoyable?
That's a good question. So I wanted the initial couple of events on Fort Carson, really designed for not catering to, but designed for the military and veteran community, so that you're not, if those that are disabled vets can't necessarily walk up a bunch of steep, stupid hills in Colorado, cool. This is a relatively flat course. Not a whole lot of trees in the space either, because that's just not where it's at. That's okay. I'm letting what little terrain there is, and I'm letting the targets become the challenge aspect of it. So instead of doing a full-size elk at 40 yards, full broadside, it would be fun to shoot, but that's not the scenario that I want. You're going to get an ocelot target, which is a very small cat, and he's going to be at 33 yards, hard quartering 2. That's a different scenario. If you look at Big Shot has some really cool coyote targets that offer frontal neck rings.
Oh.
Most people, right. So most people don't know how to shoot a frontal shot. Okay, so let's put a coyote target with a neck ring on it, or even a Texas heart shot rings, because it has it. So we'll put one of those out there at like 40 yards and make you work for it that way. And one of those might even be moving towards you.
And I think a lot of people would, I know I would, hesitate to do a frontal shot.
Correct.
Not that I'm confident in my bow skills. It's always that hesitation of wounding an animal,
Yep.
And not getting a good enough shot to where it's going to be lethal. So I love the idea of getting to practice on it and confidence, getting that confidence level up. The odds of you having a frontal shot might be kind of slim out in the woods, but it's never zero, So you don't, like, again, in the military, what do they always tell us? Practice how you are going to play,
Yep.
Why not do it in archery? Because you never know
That's
when
right.
you're going to get that perfect shot on that 500-inch bull, and you just have no other choice but to release an arrow, because I'm releasing an arrow at a 500-inch bull.
I don't care how
time.
far it is.
Yeah, it could be 150 yards. I am shooting.
It's going to fly.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's going to fall short, but it's going to fly. I'm going to at least say I took a shot at it.
There's a range up here that had, a couple years ago, they had a full-size standing elk target at 141 yards.
Wow.
And my buddies and I, we stepped out and they looked at me and said, "You're gun, aren't you?" I said, "Absolutely. I have to." And so 3 arrows, 2 of them were in foam. Both were in the 8 ring at 141 yards. They just looked at me. "This is why we hate shooting with you." I said, "No, that's fair." I get it.
Yeah, I get it. I totally do. Let's talk about your shooting habits, and I'll kind of share mine as we talk about it. So let's start off first. What do you shoot?
So you mentioned whites earlier. You mentioned carbons. So I have an RX-5 as my backup bow, and I have an RX-7 as my primary.
Okay. What kind of arrows?
So I have custom built Easton 4 mils for the RX-7, and I have Easton FMJs on the RX-5. Both are running quad fletch. Both are running nocturnal red LED Nox on the tail end, and then I use a German-made field point that I can't think of the name of right now for practice, but for hunting purposes, I'm a huge fan of the Annihilator broadheads.
Okay. I have an Elite Carbon Era that I love. I got Easton 5 mils, I think, from Adams Precision Archery. They're custom made.
Yep, I know Dustin.
Shout out to Adams Precision Archery. I love him and his company. Super good to me when I had a couple of field points that were missing. I just sent him a text and I was like, "Hey man," and he sent them to me. Super good dude.
Yep.
So I love that. And then I started shooting a wrist release for like the longest time with the trigger. And you get so punchy with it sometimes.
Yep.
You're doing this, and I needed something. I started watching more John Dudley videos over and over again, and I was like, "How can this guy shoot so smooth?" And I just really focused on that, and I started shooting a hand release.
Tell me you went to a knock to it.
I did. I eventually did. Right here.
Yep, I got the same one.
And the reason why I love it is because it's just these 2 fingers, and the rest of the hand relaxes. And that's what I watched. I listened to him talk about it one time, and that's why I dropped the money on it, because I was like, I feel like I'm like this.
Yep.
You're tense, so all your muscle,
everything in your forearm, and you're not using your back muscles like you're supposed to. You're not using the right shoulder muscles. Versus when you switch to a thumb, it forces you to change that technique.
Yep. And my old hand release, I think it went all the way out except for the pinky. So I was still able to hold it like that. But what are you doing? You're still kind of gripping it around your hand.
But you can twist it and manipulate it to set it off.
Yeah.
Whereas with the knock to it, you can't. You're only focused here. All you can do is wrap that thumb and let your back pull it all the way through to set it off.
Yep. And I love that. It just feels so much more relaxed to me.
Yep.
And I think the point is you got to shoot what you're comfortable with, not what anybody tells you, because I swore by, a wrist release, with that Velcro, or I like to tighten it around there real tight.
Yeah.
I like the security of it. That way you can never drop it. I was always punching the target real bad. I could never get the length right. And I was always, trying to do this and trying to, anchor with my finger or something. And
Well, and for a lot of veterans, right, we're used to having the trigger in the middle of the fatty part of your finger, tip of your finger.
Yep.
When you switch over to archery, you're still trying to do the same thing. Unfortunately, that's wrong because that trigger finger should be in the second knuckle, buried in. So you're going to wrap that knuckle around, and again, should be pulling through with your back. But most guys just wrap that finger around and they just hammer it and let it go.
Yeah, and that was my problem because I tried to do that. I tried to do it, or I wrapped it a little bit more, and then I would relax, and I would try to just squeeze the back muscle or squeeze the forearm to where you just pulled it back, and I never could get it. So eventually I bought, I think it was a Carter release, and I shot it for a while, and then eventually I got to knock to it just because I was like, I feel like I'm not relaxed enough. And I feel like there's always a chance for me to punch it, and it's always in my head. So when I got the knock to it, I just felt like it was so much more relaxed. You feel like the only thing that's just anchored is these two fingers, and it's so much better.
It's just a whole different world.
Yeah, it's just.
And I've got mine cranked down to where the release weight is a frog hair.
Yeah, mine's pretty low too. As I got used to it, I started lowering it down. That way I could just feel super comfortable.
Yep.
The shot surprised me, and I focused on the shot, not pulling
on your
back.
form.
Yeah,
right.
I focused on that, and what I love about archery is that it can be such a easy and comforting discipline if you let it.
It can be very humbling every shot.
Yes, it can be that too.
Yeah. If you don't follow your form and your process, it's a humbling experience every shot.
But you know what I love about it the most is that I can go out there on a Monday night after a crappy day at work, send 4 or 5 arrows down, at 20 yards, and for a few minutes my worries go away.
Yep.
I'm not hitting a bottle. And and you talked earlier about some of your challenges with that. I'm not hitting a bottle. I'm not doing any kind of drugs. And honestly, I'm not really spending any money because it's already been spent.
Well, I can't say it's any cheaper than doing drugs, but yes.
No, it's initial setup. Let's be clear. Initial setup is not cheap by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
But you could go to an academy, a local sports store, and drop a couple $100 and get an archery setup. Is it going to be fantastic? No, but you could make it what it is.
But that's where you start, right?
Yeah.
And just to your point, when my buddy handed me a bow and told me to try it, that's what I did. Is I went over to Bass Pro and bought a bear that was already hunting setup, I think is what they called it. It was like $400.
Yep.
And for $500, I was out the door with a release and arrows and a bow, and I was shooting. And that held me over for at least 5 years before I realized that I can outshoot what this bow is capable of. And then I upgraded, and then I upgraded, and then I upgraded, and I upgraded, and here we are.
My first bow, when I wanted to start shooting again, just after the military, was a used Elite Energy, I think. It was a couple of years old, and it was like I paid like $200 cash for it. It was like 75 pounds, and I had to turn it down a lot so I could shoot it. And it was just getting used to shooting again and the let off. And then I've shot a couple. I have a Hoyt that I do love because my wife bought it for me, and I do love shooting that. And I did eventually shoot it pretty well, but I always just found that with an Elite, the let off and the cam system it favored my shooting abilities a lot better.
When you find the right let off and right back wall, it's a whole different experience for how comfortable you are with the bow, which means you're willing to go out and practice more often, which means you're willing to go make some more challenging shots with it. It just overall it stacks up in the right favor.
It's kind of like golf. I talk to a lot of buddies who play golf, and I'm not a golfer because I'm so friggin' horrible at it. It's not even funny. But they say the same thing. Like, I've bought $400 drivers that I couldn't hit a lick with, and this $150 driver I got from a garage sale, I can sail it straight every time. It's about what you're comfortable with, what fits you well. And what would you say to veterans who want to get into archery?
Do it right now. If nothing else, so part of what Valor Archery Challenge offers is rental bows and coaching. So
let's talk about that. Let's talk about that a little more.
Okay. So I've gone to TAC. I've gone to Mountain Archery Fest. I've gone to Western Hunt Fest. I've gone to Beast Mode. I've gone to Montage Mountain Archery Fest. All of those different events all offer wonderful scenarios. None of those events offered training, coaching, or rental gear for those that wanted to get into the space. Now, you pick an archery range local to you, they probably have some rental gear, and they will absolutely charge you for the coaching. But what I'm trying to do is a little bit different than what those shops are. And that is, if you've never shot a bow before and you want to try it, $15 covers your rental gear. And that's bow, arrows, arm guard, and quiver. When you're done at the rental booth, I'm going to spin you around and I'm going to put you with a coach that I've got. I've got about 12 volunteers right now that all said, Sam, we love what you're doing. We want to help support you. How can we do it? We'll come out and help coach people. Yeah. So they're going to grab a hold of you. They're going to spend somewhere between 15 to 20 minutes with you, get you comfortable with shooting a trad bow, get you on that entry level course, get you shooting on the entry level and get you comfortable with. Then they're going to move on to the next person. If you move from the entry level course over to the intermediate course and you, crap, I forgot what that person told me to do, there's another coach walking up and down the line that's going to grab a hold of you and help you out.
Nice.
So it really is a different, unique archery experience than what all the rest of them have to offer, just in the fact of rental gear and coaching.
Which I think is such a barrier to entry to a lot of things, not just archery, especially when you're getting out of the military. The last thing you're wanting to do is probably spend money on something that isn't essential to you kind of getting settled, because that's such a transition. You're worried about paying bills and settling your life, and you tend to forget about things that might make you happy to kind of keep morale up and keep you focused and keep you kind of centered. A barrier to entry to a lot of hobbies could be, spending that money that maybe you don't have. So you can go out to a place like this and get to rent it for a lot cheaper. I think that's awesome.
And that's kind of goes back into the whole point of this, right? If you're active military in the process of transitioning, yeah, you're worried about what your next job is going to be. Yeah, you're worried about what that career path is going to look like. But there's a couple of things that are probably floating around in the back of your mind that you're not vocalizing, that you really should be thinking about. And some of that is, where's my next group of camaraderie? Where's my next network? How do I, kind of to your point, how do I connect with other people? So by having an event that's really focused towards the military and the veteran community, and I'm going to put you side by side, well, guess what? Your network already extends just in having connected with those other folks. The veteran wants to talk to the active military to relive some stories. The military needs to figure out how to transition out besides what TAPs offer them. So having a conversation while you're shooting with a vet already gives you a bigger advantage for success.
Yeah, because TAP is a congressionally mandated program that is checking the box. There's some great places that do really wonders with TAP. It is not all-inclusive. It does not help you. It is not the key to transitioning. The key to transitioning is community. Finding people and asking questions. I think that was probably my biggest issue, is I didn't do enough of that. And I learned that later on as I started getting involved in veterans organizations and talking to other veterans. I was like, man, if I would have asked more questions, I could have totally rocked this a lot easier. And that's when I just started regurgitating what I was hearing. Hey, you need to talk to so-and-so, make sure you do this. Hey, you need to do this on your resume. And it was like, and then I started preaching to other veterans, like, reach out to other veterans, send them a DM on any social media platform and ask them, hey man, can I bend your ear for 5 minutes?
Right.
Ask them some questions. They'll either reply back to you or they won't. And then you move on to find someone else and just ask the question. I found that a lot of veterans are willing to listen, and they'll open it up. So sure, man, give me a call, send me an email, let me know what you need, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And go from there, because community is such a big thing. And half the time of what you're doing at, like at TAC, half the time what I was doing was talking to people.
Yeah.
In vendor village and out on the range or out on the free range, like walking to a target, like you're talking to the people in front of you, the people behind you.
It's interactive.
Yeah, it's interactive.
Like I said, when you go to the gun range, you don't get that. You don't have that level of connectedness or camaraderie. But when you go to the archery range, we're going to talk about the bows. We're going to talk about how we shot. We're going to talk about what that shot even looked like. And like a lot of my friends who know me, they're saying, Sam, the conversation is going to be how much people are going to be frustrated, annoyed, and having fun because of the scenarios that you set up. It's not trees, but you put a hard cording too, and that's, like you said, that's a difficult shot in its own right that most people don't practice. The frontal shots that nobody practices is going to create a bit of conversation while you're walking to pull your arrows.
Yeah.
Can you believe this guy set this up for us?
Yeah.
And like I said, I've got a couple tricks up my sleeve that I'm not sharing, but there's going to be some extreme challenges in there that you're going to look at me and go, really, dude?
Do you hate arrows? Do you just hate them?
Yep, pretty much.
But you're right though, because after you shoot, like I was in a group with my buddy Steve Stratton, who was up there in Colorado, who I'm gonna hopefully get to come down to Colorado Springs with me, because he's up in Denver.
Cool.
Later this year, and that was the conversation. I would shoot, and then he would shoot, and then we'd walk to the target, and we would, along the way, we'd look at tree limbs and stumps, and like, oh, someone definitely shanked the arrow there.
Right.
I just barely missed it myself. Like, that's the whole conversation, is the shot and the target placement. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was never really criticizing it as much as it was like, oof, that was a bold one. That was a tough one. I really had to arc it, and if I didn't, it would have done this. I would have definitely lost another arrow.
Right. I was a frog hair underneath that branch. Did you see that little branch that was going?
Yes. Like, that's what it is the whole time. And I enjoyed every challenging shot. So I can't wait to get out there and check out what you got going on now. Tell me this though, what is kind of the future looking like after this year into the future? What big plans do you have for both Archery N Motion and Valor?
So Archery N Motion still has a deep home for me. But again, if it's not going to be accepted by the archery community yet, I don't want to say it's backburnered, but it's going to be pushed back a little bit. I'll still continue to push it. I'm going to keep making videos for it, show what it's capable of, bring new technology to the space, but it won't be the primary focus. The primary focus will really be wrapped around Valor and how do I take that not only in Colorado, but across the country, and really bring that as a community event supporting the military and veterans overall across the country, and what can that really become? Well, I've got 5 events already booked for Colorado for 2025. Had a couple conversations with folks up in Montana that like the idea of bringing it up there, South Dakota, Georgia, North Carolina. So I think there's potentials in 2026 to really start to expand where it goes. Mm-hmm. Now it's just a factor of, okay, who wants to play along for the ride?
Dude, I'd love to help you try to figure out a spot here in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what all you need to do it. We can talk offline, but I mean,
that's right,
man. I would love to have one here.
You got Fort Sill down there. I just need a connection.
Fort Sill. Fort Sill's got a lot of room. That'd probably be the best place to do it. We don't have a lot of room up here at Vance, in Northwest Oklahoma, but man, you could totally do it. Even if we could find a public space too. Are you just trying to stick to military bases, or try to anywhere else?
I want that to be the primary focus because it's hard to get military to travel for things if they don't have time off. Yeah. But if I host it on a base, then it's a 15-minute commute for them to come out and do their thing for the day and go back to doing whatever they were doing.
Yeah.
Just it creates a more open opportunity for them.
Yep.
Rather than trying to travel to a TAC event.
Yeah, that's tough. Even from where I'm at, when they do the one in Oklahoma, it's a 5-hour drive to the other side of the state for me. So it's an overnight trip. You got to book a hotel room and all that stuff.
Yep.
Fort Sill's still a little bit of a drive, but it's not as bad. I could do that in a day. But I think that's the fun part of it. It's just a little road trip with you and your bow and maybe a bag of gear and
a couple of buddies, and come out and play. Let the trash talk start. Have some fun. Meet new folks. The other thing that we haven't really covered with Valor is that I'm bringing something different to the table. So if you think about your TAC event that you went to, it had a vendor village full of retail spaces.
Yep.
Right. All the different archery companies were represented, selling their stuff. Again, I'm trying to bring something a little bit different to the table. So instead of having the retail space, I'm bringing the veteran service organizations, the veteran hunting, fishing, and outdoor organizations, and veteran-owned businesses to the space. So now, and where you had at TAC, you had the vendor village in the middle of where in a kind of a mall type scenario.
Yeah,
I'm separating it so that at every shooting station, there is a vendor there, or there's a VSO there, or there's a veteran hunting organization at every shooting station, so that you've got a direct connection with somebody you may or may not have ever spoke with, VFW, American Legion, right, whatever the case may be. And you can have that conversation about whether or not it makes sense to connect with them.
Dude, I love that. Maybe the most out of everything is you're almost forcing the conversation.
Yep.
And I think that is part of the battle. That is absolutely part of the battle when it comes to veterans and active duty and transitioning and dealing with the demons and the challenges of taking off the uniform or wearing the uniform consistently over a long period of time. So I think having those conversations, and of course the silent judgment as you're shooting,
Yeah, right.
But again, it's fun. Like, it's so much fun to just poke fun at yourself if you do a bad shot.
Well, and your buddies are going to do it, so you might as well jump into it.
Exactly.
That's just how it's going to go.
Now, how can people... Go ahead.
When you look at some of the scenarios that are going to be in play, you're going to talk trash to your buddies, but then all of you are going to go, do you believe this guy? Because this guy's he's evil.
How can people get involved with Valor Archery Challenge, from whether having a booth at one of the targets or just being there to support financially, donations? How can they reach you and kind of get involved?
From a donation and support perspective, I would say I've reached out to probably 95% of all the organizations that support veterans already. If you're one of the 5% that I haven't connected with, reach out to me. Hit the website, support at Veteran Archery Challenge or ValorArcheryChallenge.com, and let's connect up and figure out how to make it work for both of us. Otherwise, like I said, I've reached out to most of them already. 90% of the 95% that I've reached out to absolutely love the concept of what I'm doing, and they want to support it. Some already had other obligations that they couldn't make for like the April or May event, and that's okay. If you can make it, great. If not, that's fine. For the VSOs and the veteran hunting fishing organizations, I'm giving them a booth for free. So it's not like they've just got to pay to get there.
Wow.
You're not paying for a booth. I'm not charging for any of that. The veteran-owned businesses, there's a booth fee for a veteran-owned business, but it's $250. It's not breaking the bank for any of them.
Yeah. No, it's not too expensive at all. And again, you said you have 40 total targets, so you only have 40 opportunities to try to get in and get a table.
Plus novelty shots.
Yeah. So,
and that's where the evil really comes into play.
I just pictured you kind of sitting there in your garage, just like looking at these targets going, what kind of shots could I mix up for this to really get them right?
You have no idea how deep that goes. So the one I thought up the other day was ping pong balls, and I'll just leave that there. There's another one where you're going to get a bucket of money if you're the winning hand for the day. But I'm going to take a deck of cards, face down on a target, staple them all in. Here's the price tag. You get 5 shots. You get 5 cards. That's your hand. Winning hand wins. 5-card stud.
Ooh, that's fun.
Yep.
That's fun. I like that.
Like I said, there's some fun novelty shots that you're going to work for it.
Okay. I like that. That's really cool. I think that's
it's different.
It's different. Yeah, it's very different. And it gives a little bit of a challenge, risk versus reward kind of going on there.
Yeah. I've got a couple steel plate targets that you're going to shoot at.
Oh, man.
One might be moving.
Oh, God. Oh, no. Yeah. The Under Armour logo that they have at TAC, that it's all metal except for the little sliver in the middle. Yep. And I'm like, I didn't shoot it, but I watched. And as I was walking by, all I heard was ping, 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 ping. Because it was like, nope, nobody's hitting that. They wasted thousands of dollars of arrows on that one.
15 years, I've probably donated, let's call it easily 4 dozen arrows to steel targets. Easily 4 dozen.
Oof.
To me, that's TAC is fun. Mm-hmm. You throw a steel plate out there, I can't resist it. I have to.
You got to try.
So, August of last year, I was invited down to be a presenter at a group in Colorado called the Outdoorsman Days. And they asked me to bring Archery N Motion down and set up a moving target. And I said, cool. I can do whatever I want. They said, yep. I said, all right. So I put the Reinhardt steel plate deer target on it at 78 yards with the 4-inch foam circle. And that's all I gave you was a 4-inch foam circle at 78 yards moving.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of guys that, broken as I am, walked up and said, I have to try that. Cool. Go grab your bow. And they, $20, they got to try it. Chance of winning a shirt. But for easily 2 hours, pang, pang.
Oh yeah. And it just, the more you see people do it, the more you're like, I wonder if I could.
Yep. And that's it. I ended up with a line of people stacked up ready to say, I got to try it. Yep. Please do.
It's like the long shot at tack so you could win the truck.
Yep.
It's like,
you just have to try it.
I got to give it a try. I could win a truck. I mean, the odds are, pretty small, but you know what? You could win a truck. Why not? I mean, sure. I love the idea of the big target that you showed, that you posted this week in the big oval. If the different angles, I think it's cool. I think the motion part of it, I think probably people are probably thinking about motion as just like back and forth.
And I have those as well, right? Straight line movers that just roll out, stop, and roll back.
But what you showed this week is the way with the circle, the way it was around the tree.
Yep.
And it changed the angle that the target was quote unquote looking at you, but then the tree, it goes around the tree. I love the idea of that because that's exactly what an animal is doing. It's not walking in a straight line necessarily. It could be walking in a straight line and then turning its head and then moving in a circle, sniffing something on the ground, licking a limb, like that movement. I think is more needed than people probably realize, and they need to experience it to really understand it.
And that's where I've come to learn is that people have to shoot it to understand what it really is. Even just that straight line mover, understanding that when you add motion, it's a whole different shot scenario, right? Because if you're drawback on a flat paper target, you've got 2 minutes during a Vegas shoot in order to take that arrow out the door. If you go to a ASA, IBO, any type of archery event, you've got 2 minutes to let that arrow fly. So you've got all the time in the world to get settled in, make sure your anchor's perfect. You've got somebody holding an umbrella to keep the sun out of your eyes or off your sights. And that's all well and good. But if I throw a moving target out there, you don't have the time for any of that. Mm-hmm. You have to draw back, anchor, settle, and let it fly.
Yeah. Well, and you don't have the perfect conditions every time either. It could be dusk where, it's starting to settle. It's low light. It's still legal shooting light, but it's low light. It's like the wind picked up. It's hot. And I know in Oklahoma there's been times where it's been 90-something degrees in late October, and you get trickles of sweat burning your eyes while you're drawing back in a deer stand, and that's the reality of it. It's never perfect conditions.
Well, somebody had talked to me about, if you think about how this mover works, I don't even know where to aim at. I said, okay, cool. That's probably one of the key points about shooting at a moving target. If I were to ask you the speed of your elite bow with your arrows, you're probably going to tell me it's somewhere in the range of 270 to 295 feet per second. Mm-hmm. Great. I can tell you my RX-7 shoots at 292, right? And that means very little until you put that target out at distance. Mm-hmm. So knowing that the target's out at 100 yards or knowing that there's a moving target. Well, now if it's moving, now you understand where your lead time of arrow leaves your bow to get to that moving target, how that speed comes into play on that moving target.
Mm-hmm. And if you've ever tried to shoot a deer out of a deer stand sitting 15 to 20 feet up in the air, you don't realize the angle, and even a deer casually walking and just checking things out 1 foot at a time slowly. That movement could be the difference between an inch or two, and that could be the difference between hitting the vitals or hitting a shoulder.
There's on my YouTube channel, on the Archery N Motion YouTube channel, there's a video, it's a while back, but my buddy put me up in a tree stand. We put a straight line mover behind 3 trees, and I had a full-size mule deer target on it moving in behind those trees. And so, okay, we need to shoot a drone footage, drones up above me, shooting down through those trees at the target while it's moving to show that this is realistic training. This is realistic practice.
Yeah.
Shooting at the paper will get you good form, but it's not realistic when it comes to the woods.
Yeah. It doesn't help you understand angles. It doesn't help you understand speed and timing.
Yep.
And when you're trying to harvest animals, that is important.
Yeah.
Because again, like I said, it could be the difference between an inch or two, a heart shot and a shoulder shot. And, any of those different parameters could mean the difference between harvesting one and wounding one. And the goal is always to harvest one and get an ethical shot. Something's going to take them down quick, and you got to practice to do that. And
when I first spun up Archery N Motion, I had a couple older shooters. I'll leave that word there. That told me shooting at a moving target's unethical. And I said, "You hunt in Colorado, right?" "Well, yeah." I said, "Cool. I've never killed an animal that wasn't moving in Colorado. I've never gotten an elk to stop. I've never gotten a mule deer to stop. Turkey, don't stop. Grouse, don't stop. Pronghorn." They look at you and they either blink or they run.
Yeah.
You have a split second to make that shot. And the only way you can practice that, moving target.
Yeah. It sounds unusual, but when you start to really think about it, go back and think about all your old hunting scenarios. You're always waiting for an animal to stop to give you that perfect shot.
You're waiting for that ambush shot.
Yes. They're always moving. You're the one waiting for them to stop. So again, I think it'll be embraced. I really do, because I think it is ideally what is needed to practice.
Yeah.
It just sounds challenging, so people go, I don't know.
Well, there's a lot of guys that shoot for score, and this ruins their scores.
You know what, though? Don't come out then. You know what? Don't come out. Then go shoot ASA or something. Go sign up for that if you're all about your score.
So I took it to an ASA event, started 2023, and that was the first thing somebody said. "Well, it's going to ruin my scores." And so I said, "Fine, let's make it easy for you. I'll add 2 extra points to whatever your score is. So if you shoot the high 14, I'll give you 16 points if you shoot it while it's moving."
They take you up on that?
They did. They missed. So they ended up with 7 points.
That's what happens when you're shooting at paper or you're shooting at a static foam target. You're gonna and people. I don't think people really understand that. They need to come out and witness it and shoot some arrows and get the feel for it, because it's going to be a challenge. Are you going to miss? Are you going to shank some arrows? Probably.
Sure.
But you're run the risk of that doing it out in the woods anyway. And most of us are practicing to not miss when we're out in the woods.
I would rather practice at home on the range rather than practice in the woods on an animal.
Yes, sir. Especially again, the 500-inch bull comes out there. I want a
solid.
I want a solid, because I want to go brag to everybody.
That's right. Last year we were at an event here in Colorado Springs. I had the mover out. I decided to bring a turkey target on it at 41 yards, which is a realistic shot during turkey season. But now the turkey's moving.
But turkeys move.
Yep, they do move. They never stop.
No.
Never stop. It's like a hog. They never stop.
Yeah, which is why when people do headshots on turkeys, it's absolutely impressive to me, because
all day long.
I'm like,
That's a small target that moves very regularly.
Oh yeah. I mean, even a turkey itself is a small target. Yeah. Those feathers and all that give it the appearance that it's larger. I've seen people shoot through a turkey and not kill it because it's just feathered. So getting that small gap there, where you can hit it, let alone a headshot. But again, great practice. Same thing with a hog, because hogs are tough, because you could get a perfect shot on a hog and not kill it.
I was in Texas 3 years ago on a hog hunt, 10 foot up in a tree stand. Hog was 10 yards out, put an arrow all the way through it. And this thing ran for almost 140 yards through the nastiest, pokiest crap that I've ever imagined.
Yeah.
And it was right at dark when I shot him. So by the time we found him, it was way dark. 30 of his buddies were 30 yards away, really angry with me. It was an interesting night.
Yeah. Hogs are dangerous too. Yeah. You can get yourself in a bad predicament with those real fast, but it's good practice, I think. And I love what you're doing with it. I hope that it continues to grow.
It'll gain traction. It's just, like you said, everybody's got to see it, feel it, and experience it before they understand truly what it is.
Yeah, because it's more realistic than you think. So I encourage people to go out and go out to Valor Archery Challenge this year. Support Sam and the organization, support the VSOs and other organizations that are out there supporting veterans and even active duty folks, and check it out. But Sam, before I let you go, where can they find more about you and the programs and follow along?
So everything for Archery N Motion, whether it's the website or all the social media, is at Archery, the letter N as in Nancy, motion.com. For Valor, it is valorarcherychallenge.com. And the only difference on social media for that is the YouTube channel is Valor Archery Challenge 1. So everything else is at Valor Archery Challenge. Come see what we got going on. Listen to all the videos of me talking about it. Same things that what Jeff and I have been talking about tonight. A little bit deeper in some of the videos, a little bit more of a history around some of it. But come out, come shoot, come sling some arrows, use archery as therapy, and let's see what you got.
All right, guys, that was Sam Westfall with Archery N Motion and Valor Archery Challenge. We're going to go offline. Thanks for joining us tonight. Me and Sam are going to talk offline here in a minute.
Jeff, thank you very much.
Yep, my pleasure.